subscribers of our Knowledge Junction 2.0 channel. This is Saurabh, guys, and yes, one of the most awaited videos of Knowledge Junction 2.0 is here, and this is guys regarding Maharashtra Slet 2023. The paper was conducted on 26th of March 2023, that is the same day on which Rajasthan Slet was conducted. And guys, we know that by the grace of Almighty, as I have said it before, that it is always beneficial to get the guidance from the mentor who has qualified different slets, nets, because he can give you the hands-on experience of qualifying papers like slet or net. So by the grace of Almighty, as you can see on the screen here, that I hail from Uttarakhand, and this is a warm greeting from Uttarakhand, one of the beautiful small hilly states of India. So guys, Uttarakhand Slet, Himachal Slet, also one of the most picturesque states in India, and Gujarat, we know very well Gujarat. And also I managed to qualify DRF and 9 times net English. Apart from that, in my just a few days before video, I shared that I also got GATE All India rank 38, also managed to write one book, a short book on MCQs, and also qualified 2019 the assistant professor of Uttarakhand Public Service Commission, although I did not join. So guys, just a brief introduction for all our new learners, new viewers. One more thing before I start, very happy Chaitra Navratri, as well as Ram Navami is here. So may Lord Ram Ram give us the blessings, and may we continue to learn on this merry way of this paper and also in the rest of the lectures. Okay, guys, so this is a paper which is a very important paper. Before starting the paper, just a quick review of this paper. The paper was very much a factual paper, and because the paper was conducted on the same day when Rajasthan Slet was also conducted, so it is but obvious that comparisons have to be made. And as compared to Rajasthan Slet, I would say the paper was factual. Maharashtra Slet was factual, as well as the paper, the question paper. The questions asked were relatively, you can say, easy than the Rajasthan Slet. In my previous video on Rajasthan Slet solution, I also mentioned that they asked very much factual questions from English language section, especially English language section, and research methodology also was probed in that paper. In this paper, we will find that many questions are traditional questions, factual questions, but at the same time, the paper was not that easy also. But yes, those students who have prepared well, for them, it's going to be a relatively easy paper. At the same time, I would also say that some of the questions asked from criticism were very good. So let's see, without any delay, the complete solution along with the key explanations. So guys, let us look at the question number 1. Let me not, this is set number C, by the way, Maharashtra Slet, set number C. So let me not the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds. So the above lines are from a sonnet by very popular sonnet, guys. The sonnet is written by William Shakespeare. Yes, this is sonnet number 116. And we know, guys, that William Shakespeare published his sonnets in the year 1609. And it's a collection of 154 sonnets. And these sonnets were printed by a man called as Thomas Thorpe. If you remember, this was one of the very important questions in our Uttarakhand LT. Okay. Now, before I go to second question, one more important information, that Shakespeare's sonnets were published earlier in an anthology called as Passionate Pilgrims. Okay. In this anthology, 5 of the Shakespearean sonnets were published. So this was published in 1599. Okay, so that is a very important information. Now, question number 2, who was the architect and stage designer who had provided the sets for Ben Johnson's masks? So, guys, the answer is Inigo Jones. Yes, Inigo Jones was the stage architect in Jacobean era who provided the settings and stage architects for Ben Johnson's mask. Now, what are masks? Masks are court entertainments in the Jacobean era, and these plays are known for the elaborate stage direction, elaborate stage setting, and they involved singing and dancing. Okay, we know that Milton wrote a very famous mask called as Comus. Okay, now moving on to next question, question number 3. Who called his novels as comic epic poem in prose? So the answer is Henry Fielding. Yes, guys, Henry Fielding called this term in his preface to Joseph Andrews. We know that Joseph Andrews was written in 1742, and in this novel, in the preface, he was, of course, reacting to Pamela, written by Richardson. And this novel is considered as one of the foundations of realism in English novels. We also know that this novel led to the development of eventually the picaresque traditions in English novels, and Henry Fielding sometimes is that's why called as the father of English novels. Although first novel was written by Samuel Richardson in the year 1740, Pamela or Virtue Rewarded. Okay. Moving on to question number 4, Touchstone is a famous character in which Shakespeare's plays. So the answer to this question is C, As You Like It. Yes, guys, As You Like It has this famous character of Touchstone who was Touchstone. He was a cynical court clown or jester. Okay, cynical means the one who is always doubtful about the things. He's also at the same time, you can say, apprehensive and philosophical in some ways. Question 5, on the knocking at the gate in Macbeth. So, guys, this is a very important question. Always they have been asking this question. I would term this question as coming from the field of romantic criticism. The answer is yes, Thomas de Quincey. Thomas de Quincey is known as the writer of the Confessions of an English Opium Eater. I'm not writing the full name of the work. It's a long title, but still, Confessions of an English Opium Eater. Right, this is the work that Thomas de Quincey has written. Same fellow has written this essay in the year 1823, and this essay is called as one of the brilliant pieces of criticism by Thomas de Quincey, and even the harshest critics have agreed that this is his best piece. Now, the essay was published in London Magazine, and the essay has kind of effect on the psychological criticism. It's called as a precursor of psychological criticism, which was to come later through the writings of Sigmund Freud and others. Question number 6. Among the 4 statements given below, only one statement is correct. Identify the correct one. So, guys, as I told you that questions in the from the field of criticism were very testing and were of very good level, I would say. So the answer is D. Yes, new criticism is considers text as an autonomous, ontological, and organic whole. We know that new criticism, the work as such, was written by J.C. Ransom, and he published his book in the year 1941, which is kind of considered as a culmination or manifesto of new criticism, although there have been many writers associated with new criticism, and it is a typical movement from America, and the agrarians, the you can say fugitives, they were also called as fugitives in South of America. The writers like Clint Brooks and Alan Tate, Wimsett, and Birdsley, terms like affective fallacy, pathetic fallacy, all these key terms are associated with this theory of new criticism. Now, very interestingly, new, the word new in new criticism, just very quickly, because I always say that guys, my USP is a specialization in literary criticism and theory. So in a very short manner, I would like to just brief you that new criticism deals with the, very importantly, you can say it ignores the biography. What is new? It ignores the biography of the author, and it also ignores the context of the text. That's why new criticism is also called as decontextualized approach, because it is focusing only on the text. So anything that is outside the text, that is the context or the biography, it ignores these two things. That's why this is the new thing in new criticism. Okay, I hope you found it useful. You find it useful. All right, moving on. Question number 7. The exemplar and mentor of liberal humanism. Very good question. So liberal humanism, the exemplar, that means prime example, and mentor, we know, leader. So liberal humanism in England was basically initiated by Matthew Arnold. Okay. But if you look at very important book of criticism, and this is a very important book, guys, those who are preparing for NET and Slet, please go for beginning theory. If you have still not got hold of this book, then you are missing something really very huge. Okay, this is a book by Peter Barry, and in this book he talks about liberal humanism in the preface of this book. So he also talks about liberal humanism by F.R. Lewis, and he says that F.R. Lewis is one of the pillars of new liberal humanism in early 20th century in Britain. Okay, so F.R. Lewis is known for works like Great Tradition, for magazines like Scrutiny, which he edited with his wife, Tweedy Lewis. And F.R. Lewis is actually also an important critic of Cambridge School. If you remember, Cambridge School, the great member also of this school was I.A. Richards, who wrote Practical Criticism in the year 1929. So F.R. Lewis also comes under liberal humanism and also Cambridge School. Now, what is liberal humanism? Very quickly, liberal humanism is all about, you can say, just for your understanding, mixture of new criticism. But whereas new criticism only deals with the text-based approach, liberal humanism also mixes the element of morality in a work. So I would say that liberal humanism is all about new criticism plus the moral aspect of literature. So in that aspect, you can just remember for your understanding that Americans are quite possessed with the understanding of the text, whereas the Britishers, they are more keen about the cultural or moral aspect of the work. Okay. So question 8, I have known her from an ample nation. Choose one, then close the eyes, close the valves of her attention. So Emily Dickinson, so the question is, which poem? The soul selects her own society. Now, guys, Emily Dickinson is considered as one of the recluse poetess of the 19th century American poetry. Her career is often contrasted with Walt Whitman, who was the political kind of big shot of American poetry. He was called as Bard of American poetry, and he was for his whole life occupied with his magnum opus, Leaves of Grass. Continue to edit that collection for, you can say, 9 successive, you can say, different editions. At the same time, here is Emily Dickinson, who is called as Nun of Amherst. She was very much a recluse, very much a poetess who avoided writing or publishing even her poems. Only 8 of her poems were published before her death. And in fact, most of her poems deal with the themes of death, loneliness, isolation, transcendental elements. And very interestingly, that, and this is a question that I am directly quoting from NET, that most of her poems were left untitled. And she also avoided using capital letters in her poems. She also experimented with diction and syntax, and many of her poems involve the use of brackets. Okay, So in that aspect, you can say she is also an obscure poetess. One struggles to understand her poems immediately. In that aspect, you can compare her to Browning. Okay. So moving on, next question: a foot in which a stressed syllable is followed by an unstressed syllable. So it's a question from rhetorics and prosody section. The answer is trochai. We know, and this is a code that I am writing for the benefit of all the students. You can just remember IATD. I is a pair of U and S, that is unstressed and stress. A is 2 times U and S. T is S and U, that is first stress, and then second is unstressed, and then D is first stress followed by 2 unstressed. So this is IATD, a very important code of, you can say, foot. You can call all these things as foot, in plural called as feet. So what is feet or foot? It's a minimum unit of measuring a meter. Okay, comes under prosody. Right. Moving on, next question is aphorism and epigram. Very easy question, no brainer. Distinguishing features of the prose style of Bacon. Yes, guys, Bacon is known as the father of English essays. And aphoristic style means using maxims, using proverbs, kind of. And epigrams are short and witty sayings. So Bacon is known for that kind of, you can say, prose full of brevity. Moving on, who among the following can be said to be the dramatist of the Victorian age? So if you look at the Victorian age, the dramatist is, of course, the question is ambiguous. I would say that I would include Oscar Wilde. But at the same time, George Bernard Shaw is also a strong contender for the option, but we know that most of his plays came also in the 20th century. So that's why we rule him out. And Oscar Wilde, yes, last decade of 20th and 19th century, which is often called as, and this is a very important point, guys, naughty 90s. Naughty 90s was the period also called as the period of decadence from 1891 to 1900. Oscar Wilde was writing one of his classical plays, The Importance of Being Earnest, which came out in the year 1895. It's called as High Comedy, High Burlesque. You can find more about that play later on. So question 12, who said it is healthier to read tidbits than Tennyson's Idylls of the King? Could not find the exact answer, guys, of this one. Please do post or comment us and let us know if you can find out the exact answer with the source. Okay. So question 13, which one of the following novels is a part of Lawrence Durrell's Evington Quintet? So guys, first of all, Evington Quintet, it is a 5-volume series, pentology, we can say. And the answer to this is Sebastian. So the novel was published in, means the whole novel, 5-novel sequence was published from 1974 to 1985. And this was the 3rd novel. And Lawrence Durrell is known for writing the novels based on the, you can say, kind of conflict between the Indian and British values. And if I'm not wrong, he is also the one who got the posthumous Booker Prize after his death. He's one of the very few writers to receive that. Please do check and find out the work for which he got that. Now, the realization of a morpheme in terms of a phoneme. So this is a question from linguistics, guys. And the answer to this question is morphophonemics. So when you can say get a morpheme in terms of a phoneme. Now, phoneme is a minimum unit of a sound. Say for example, we say like b. This is phoneme, and morpheme is more of a, you can say, lexical unit, the word. So when you realize a morpheme in terms of a phoneme, it's called as morphophonemic. Okay, which is not a work of Franz Kafka. So guys, Franz Kafka was an existentialist German modern writer, very famously known for his Metamorphosis. He was a German writer, and most of his works are kind of precursors of existentialism, modern literature in at world literature in at large. And the work which he did not write in out of the option is Caucasian Chalk Circle. This work was written by another German writer who is of course, also a legendary writer. He was Bertolt Brecht, the guy who initiated alienation effect and also epic theater. Okay, so Mother Courage and Her Children was the name of the famous play that Bertolt Brecht wrote. He was a German experimental playwright. Okay, moving on to question number 15. Oh, sorry, 15 is done, I think. Okay, so moving on to the next question is the scene which is wherein the narrator is transport to his childhood while he tastes a madeleine dipped in tea appears in Remembrance of Things Past. Now, guys, Remembrance of Things Past is actually considered as the most voluminous modern novel. Most voluminous modern novel written by a French author, very important name, Marcel Proust. It is considered as the most voluminous modern novel, I think, in 7 volumes. And the name of the writer is very important for all of us, Marcel Proust, 20th century novel. The other name of this novel is In Search of Lost Time. Okay. Moving on to question number 17. Which poet said that poetry created which attained the end of blood, imagination, intellect, running all together? So the answer is W.B. Yeats, who is also a poet as well as a critic. So W.B. Yeats is known for such kind of reflective thoughts on poetry. So who wrote Daniel Deronda, simple one-liner? The answer is George Eliot. Yes, guys, George Eliot is actually a female novelist known as Mary Ann Evans. She used George Eliot as her pseudonym, and she is known for writing novels on Victorian society based on social reforms, especially the 1832 Reform Act and the various successive acts which followed. George Eliot is a realist in tradition of Jane Austen, and Daniel Deronda is written by her. Moving on, question number 19. So the writer Cyrils Debedin, it's a question from Commonwealth, or should I say post Commonwealth literature rather, and you can also call it as a third world literature. So the answer is Canadian poet. He is a Canadian poet. Okay. The term diaspora. So guys, the term diaspora comes from the Greek word, and I am just writing for you all. It's the breakup of the word is dia and spiro. So that is diaspiro. It's a Greek word. It has the origin of the word is diaspiro, which means to sow over. SOW, sow means to put anything, to put any grain or something in the ground in the hope of germinating it. So to sow over, SOW. Question 21, which of these is not a translation of Bible into English? So those who have studied the topic Bible in detail know very well that Caxton never in his life wrote a Bible. So the answer is A. Rest of the Bibles are very famous Bibles. Diphthong, a question directly from English linguistics section. So diphthong is actually a sound which is formed by the combination of two vowels in a single syllable. So we call diphthong as also a vowel glide. Okay. Now, what do you mean by vowel glide? When the combination of two vowels are associated in such a manner that they are producing the sound together. Say, for example, if you look at the word dia, or should I say a. Okay, so for example, if you write the word dia, so e plus a, so the two vowel sounds are kind of, attached together. So that is called as diphthongs. There are 8 diphthongs in English sound system, according to IPA, International Phonetics Association. Moving on to next question, guys. Who among the following is not a primary practitioner of deconstruction? So, tricky question. The answer is George Lukács. He was actually a Marxist, and he never was attached to this deconstruction. Rest of them are Deconstructionist, of course, Paul Deman, Barbara Johnson, J. Hillis Miller. If you remember Yale School of Critics, I keep on repeating this question that Yale School is a very important question, and they have been asking in all papers right across India this question, Yale School. And Yale School were the followers of deconstruction, of Derrida's followers, and Yale universities in America. So all these writers, they have been asking who in an essay of dramatic poesy by Dryden is represented by represents the ancients. So the answer is Crites. Crites, we know, is representing a representative of the ancients. At the same time, we know that Neander, although not given here in the option, represents Dryden, and Neander means new man. He is a very important character in this very important work, Essay on Dramatic Poesy, officially called as the first proper work of English criticism. That's why Dryden is called as the father of English criticism by the legendary Dr. Johnson. Which poem of Tennyson is critiqued as anti-feminist? So again, a very important question. 1847, we are talking about The Princess, and today I'm going to also tell you who was the protagonist of this very famous serio-comical blank verse poem. Ida was the protagonist, and the poem is written in the form of framed narrative where one prologue is given, and then 7 cantos are given, and then a conclusion follows. So in a way, it has kind of 3-layered structure. Men for the field, women for the heart. Very famous line of this famous poem. Now, what term does Keats use in the Grecian urn? So he famously called it as a Sylvan historian. If you remember the word or phrase Sylvan historian, Sylvan here represents Greek culture. So that is there. Now, which poem opens with the line, "For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love"? So guys, very interesting answer. Of course, we know that we are talking about John Donne's The Canonization. Okay, so John Donne's Canonization has a very interesting stanza pattern. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. The poem has overall 5 stanzas, and each stanza has 9 lines. Okay, so we can multiply 5 into 9. So how many total lines are there in this poem? 45 lines are there. It has a very complicated stress pattern. Now, what is stress pattern? First of all, let us write. It is 5-4-5-5-4-4-5-4-3. What does that mean? What am I writing here? So here I am writing the stress count. So in the first line, the total stress pairs I am writing, pairs of you can say foot I am writing. So 5 feet. Second line has 4 feet or 4 pairs. Third line has again 5 pairs, and in this way it goes on for 9 lines. So we call it as the stress you can say pattern, and these 5-4 they represents the foot or feet rather. So first line has 5 feet. We can say if it is an iamb, so we can say it's an iambic pentameter maybe. The second line has 4 feet. We can say if it is an iamb, then it is an iambic tetrameter. But if it is it can be an, you can say crocky as well. So it depends. It's not mentioned here. And the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, C, 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 and D, D. So this is the rhyme scheme of canonization. Very important poem of John Donne, right? So we have explicated the entire poem, and I hope you are liking this video. Please do share it to your friends far and wide. Let them know that here we are trying to create a kind of very important, you can say, exam oriented and very time saving kind of lecture where you are, along with the answers, you are getting the key point explanations, which is saving your time, and at the same time which is helping you in getting the trend of the paper. So I hope you can appreciate the kind of effort that goes in making videos like this. Okay, moving on to question number 28. In which play does the plot deal with a city's goldsmith, 2 apprentices and his 2 daughters, the younger sweet and modest, and the elder foolish and worldly? The answer is Eastward Hope. So guys, this is a play which is written by Ben Jonson and 2 other playwrights. You have to find it out on your own. The play actually offended King James I, who was the king at that time. And in fact, all these three writers landed in jail because of that. Okay, so it's a highly controversial play. Question 29. Samuel Johnson called John Donne as metaphysical poet in which life, or in which biography rather? So the answer is Life of Cowley. Now, guys, Life of Cowley is the first biography of very famous work called as Lives of Poets, which is a collection of 52 biographies. It's a collection of 52 biographies which was published from 1779 to 1781. Okay, and this work is also considered as a pioneering work of biographical criticism as well as a pioneering work of practical criticism. The same term practical criticism was used later on by I.A. Richards in 20th century. Moving on, question number 30. Identify the printer credited for using the two prints Beer Street and Gin Lane. So beer, we know, of course, here we are talking about a liquor, beer, and we are also talking about gin, which is also a kind of wine. So the answer to this question is William Hogarth. William Hogarth published this, you can say, two very important kind of pamphlets, which led to the kind of oh, uh, led to the kind of open discussion in British society regarding the alcohol, liquor, and its public consumption. Okay, the pamphlets were published in the year 1751. Moving on to the next question is 31. Who was responsible for Britain's first organized detective police force, the Bow Street Runners? Now, this is a very interesting story that in England, especially in mid-18th century, there used to be this gang of thief takers who used to snatch the chain or used to snatch the articles from the pedestrians and used to create all kinds of havoc. So, who was the writer who was at the helm and who initiated this famous kind of solution of this problem? And he was none other than Fielding. Yes, we know that Fielding was also he worked as an MP also. It's a capacity of MP, and he was a Whig. And Fielding initiated this concept of Bow Street Runners, which were kind of, you know, street smart police, you can say civil police, who were there uh, to get hold of such kind of thief takers. Moving on to question 22, the massacre of Paris is authored by. So the answer, although, is Christopher Marlowe, but the correct title should be it should be Massacre at Paris, which was written by Christopher Marlowe. Massacre of Paris. This same title was used by Nathaniel Lee. Okay, Nathaniel Lee. Very important, है ना? So moving on to question 33, a view of the present state of Ireland. So we know that it was a very important political work. It was written by Edmund Spencer. If you remember, Spencer was an Irish. Okay, don't forget that. And this was published in the year 1633. Okay, moving on, the journal The Tatler was founded by, of course, Richard Steele. Richard Steele was the founder of many of the periodicals of those days, and it was started in 1709. The Tatler. Moving on, next question: who said no poet, no artist of any kind has his complete meaning alone? So the famous line was said by T.S. Eliot in Traditional Poetry, Faith and Culture. Tradition, poetry, faith and culture. This is where he said that no poet, no artist, and no, you can say, if any art has its complete meaning alone. Okay, moving on to the next question. Who among the following is not a Caribbean writer? Again, a very interesting question. So if you look at the question, the options, Marlon James was a Caribbean writer. He received, in fact, he was an awarded writer in the recent times, in the recent 5 to 10 years. You can see his one of the works was awarded. Derek Walcott, of course, a Nobel Prize winner from Caribbean. Okay, who wrote a work called as Omarus, which is actually a Caribbean adaptation of Homer's, you can say, Odyssey. And V.S. Naipaul, of course, the much revered V.S. Naipaul of Indian origin. We know the one who wrote A House for Mr. Biswas. a very important novel, the debut novel. So all these three are Caribbean, of course. So we are talking about Pablo Neruda. He comes from Chile. He is a writer from South America. And if you remember, if you are doing PGT, and PGT must have come across his poem Keeping Quiet, a beautiful poem about how silence can lead to beautiful things in life. Moving on, question 37. In which poem do the following lines occur? Very beautiful poetry. Fail I alone in words and deeds. Why all men strive and who succeeds? So the poem is actually using the rhetorical question technique, and the poem is actually the answer is the last right together. Okay, and of course, the poem has 10 stanzas. In this beautiful poem, the lover is reflecting on the end of a love affair. Browning, we know, always picks up a dramatic scene and uses his beautiful poetry to create a very uh, unique picture. He is a master of dramatic monologue, the great Victorian poet Robert Browning. Now, question 38, Dylan Thomas Under Milkwood was originally actually a radio play. Dylan Thomas, let me just quickly run through his career. He was a poet of 1940s, also known as Womb Tomb Poet. Okay, and most of his poems are surrealist. That's why he is called as surrealist poet. And we know that surrealist poet talks about the dreamlike images, the obscure images, sometimes also bordering on vulgarity. And at the same time, Dylan Thomas comes from Wales. So in his poetry, the Welsh custom, Welsh mythology is amply reflected. Dylan Thomas is also known for writing poems like Fernhill. Okay, and there are many works that he wrote, and he also wrote a title which was quite similar to the title written by uh, James Joyce. Okay, you have to find out that title and you have to make a note of that title. The James Joyce actually wrote, it was a long title and he just changed the last word of that title. So I'm just keeping a suspense on that. Okay, if you don't find it, please do post. Now, question 39. What figure of speech has been used by Dryden to make fun of Shadwell in the following line? So, alone my perfect image bears, mature in dullness from his tender years. Alone all my sons is he who stands confirmed in full stupidity. So, the answer to this question is it's a kind of transferred epithet. Okay, so if you can see tender years, full stupidity. Now, what is a transferred epithet? Transferred, when you transfer something, epithet is adjective. So we can write here that transferred epithet is a misplaced adjective which still makes a sense. If you remember, the very famous example of transferred epithet is very way. You have to find out where this famous example very way was used by which poet. Okay, moving on, question number 40 is who is the author of The Sense of an Ending? Now it is written by Julian Barnes, who is a British author, was a Booker Prize winner, and a very important novel, this one, Sense of an Ending. Fricative sound. Now, fricative sound is the one when it is produced with a stricture of close approximation. When there is a stricture means when you close kind of sound, the sound which is produced by the closure of the organs, the sound organs, that is called as fricative. Now, Falstaff. Falstaff is a character in The Merry Wives of Windsor. Okay, very popular, very famous character, Falstaff. Now, which novel opens with the famous line, all happy families are alike, each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way? The very famous work is Anna Karenina. Yes, guys, the Russian legendary writer of 19th century, Leo Tolstoy, the one who wrote War and Peace, which is considered as a huge, bulky, very huge, voluminous novel. The same writer is the author of Anna Karenina. Now, if you Google Anna Karenina, you will find that it is considered arguably the greatest, yes, guys, the greatest novel ever written in world literature. So it requires complete attention. And the novel, you must make a note of this complete novel, the characters, the special scenes which happened in this novel. Please do not miss it, especially if you are preparing for NET. Moving on to the next question is, following was one of the pioneering theorists of culture studies. So we know that Raymond Williams is one of the pioneering uh, culture studies theorist, and he is known for, of course, his works on culture studies. Now, 45, an annual anthology called Wheels was published by, so it was published by Sitwells. All the Sitwells, Sitwell siblings were there. And so the answer is B. The anthology was published from 1916 to 1921, and it has 6 cycles. That means 6 editions were published in total. Question 46, the Rubaiyat of Umar Khayyam, a very popular work in English poetry in Victorian age, was actually, of course, written by Edward Fitzgerald. It was initially not understood by well or not taken well by the readers, but later on it became so famous that there were clubs formed on of this named after this work, and it was the move it this work actually inspired pre-Raphaelites in Victorian age. We know pre-Raphaelites were the group of painter poets, Rossetti and others. And very interestingly, the Rubaiyat of Umar Khayyam was actually published in 1859, as I've told you. And who was Umar Khayyam? He was an astronomer poet of Persia. Okay, I'm not writing it. You may write it. And also, Rubaiyat is actually a Persian word which comes from Rubaiya, which means a quatrain. Okay, moving on to the next question. 47. Who was the first to translate Mahabharata into English? So, Kisari Mohan Ganguly, or in short, K.M. Ganguly. This is a very important work in terms of the development of Indian mythological printing. So, it was printed by Pratap Chandra Roy. The work immediately became controversial also. And later on in the 20th century, it was published by Munshi Ram, because the work is of cultural significance. That's why I'm tracing the publication history. So it was later on published by Munshi Ram Manohar Lal, publisher. Okay. And one more interesting thing is that, because actually we know Mahabharata is divided into 18 parvas. Parv means parts. So you can say that it's a very important part. And so the work goes on for many years, from 1883 to 1896. Okay. An epic poem in Old English verse. It's a no-brainer. Beowulf, written anonymously, was in about 7th century. The poem has 3,182 lines and is considered as a magnum opus of Anglo-Saxon age. It is written in a script called as Nodex. Very important. Okay. Moving on to question 49, the belief that a second language can be taught in the same way as the learner's first language by using only the target language. So this is a question from ELT, English Language Teaching. The answer is, it is called as direct method or natural method. Okay, moving on, the panopticon, according to Foucault, was also a laboratory. It cannot be used. So basically, it cannot be used as a machine to carry out experiments. So the answer is A. So it effectively means that B, C, and D actually symbolize panopticon. So panopticon was actually a post-colonial kind of term, where he says that it's related to prison. Okay, and how prison was used by the colonial powers. Okay, so it's a symbol of surveillance. It intrudes the privacy of the prisoners. Okay, in a way, it is actually the intrusion of privacy into privacy. And this term actually came out in the work called as Discipline and Punishment by Foucault. Foucault, of course, a great French anthropologist. If you remember, in my last Rajasthan Slet paper, I told you that Foucault inspired Edward Said later on, who published Orientalism, which is considered as a manifesto of post-colonialism in 1978. Foucault has a huge influence on post-modern, post-structuralist thinkers. Now, 51. Which literary critic compares a poet's mind to a catalyst agent? So, again, it's a very important question. T.S. Eliot, we know. Okay, compares and he says that the mind of a poet is a shred of a platinum. Okay, question 52. Who among the following is not a new critic? So the answer is Northrop Frye. He's a Canadian and he comes from the field of archetypal criticism. So he is not a new critic. Okay. Moving on, the which belongs to Bloomsbury. I have already told you that in my if those who are studying from me or those who are following my lectures on YouTube, that Bloomsbury is a very important, you can say, lead for all of us in terms of understanding modern writers. So, and the answer is Virginia Woolf, of course, belongs to. She lies at the center of this very important modern writers, avant-garde writers, Bloomsbury. Okay, if you remember their location, it was in Hyde Park in London, and Bloomsbury involved Virginia Woolf, her sister Vanessa, and their husbands, E.M. Foster, D.S. Lawrence, Lytton Strachey. Okay, all these writers were there. The title of the book is, so this is a question from research methodology, as italicized in printing. When you read a title, you put it in italics in printing. Okay. In the title, which word begins with capital letters? So content words. Content words are keywords. Again, if you compare it to Rajasthan Slet, I told you that which words should be avoided in capitalization in title, like preposition, conjunctions, and also articles should be avoided in capital. Okay. Moving on, question 56. Writers achieve the goal of documentation by providing information in a comprehensible manner, of course. So, simple question. So this is a poem. It started as a pilgrimage and a beautiful poem, and they have asked the question. So I'm telling you the answers directly. So the tone of the poet is pessimistic in the poem. Okay. And the poet is referring to his daily prayers. The first two lines of the last stanza deals with irony, of course. If I can understand, this is a poem by Nissim Ezekiel. Home is where we have to gather. I think enterprise or something like that. And the poet longs here means desires for a homely stay. Okay, moving on to the prose unseen passage. So all these passages were not that difficult. If you got the time, you can solve them. What is not a feature of human consciousness? So the answer is seamlessness. The life divine exalts and envisages knowledge of spiritual truth. Life divine Aurobindo leaves his mark as a visionary saint. The word expression in the passage is not related to rational expression. The next question is, the Sardian woman and the ideology of pornography is a feminist reprisal of the work of Marcus de Sade. Name the author. So in a way, he is asking about the author who reinvented Marcus de Sade. So the answer is Angela Carter. Now, Angela Carter is a postmodern novelist, the one who is known for write novels like The Magic Toy Shop, if you remember. Okay, now Angela Carter in a way talks about Marcus de Sade, and who is first of all Marcus de Sade? He was a 18th century Frenchman who is known for his iconoclastic works on pornography and especially his works on sodomy. This is a very famous book that he wrote. I would say infamous also because it was in controversy. And sodomy actually means involving sexual pleasures. And from Sard also, we saw a word called as sadism. Sadism means involving or taking pleasure in giving pain, especially the sexual pain to others. Okay. Angela Carter wrote this work, The Sardian Woman, in 1978. Okay. Now, moving on to question 66, A.S. Bayard's Possession, a romance, returns to Victorian period. So it's a book published in 1990. The book immediately garnered attention and is known as one of the very important Roman de clef. Now, if you remember in my class, in my notes, please do join our classes. You are going to enjoy it, guys. This lecture we want to present to the whole of India so that all the learners, all the mentors, all the literary enthusiasts must see these lectures and must spread the word. A small effort here I am making from the hills of Uttarakhand to go far and wide and to exchange the little bit of knowledge that I have. So, guys, what I'm trying to say is that it is a Roman declaf. Now, what is a Roman declaf? Roman declaf is a novel with a key. When you write a novel in which the authors are presented with a certain kind of hints and suggestions, that is called as Roman declaf. Okay, so Nightmare Abbey, if you remember. Okay, in the 19th century, okay, written by the rival of P.V. Shelley. Okay, I'm just giving you the hints so that you can work out on your own that who was the writer. Okay, the first Roman declaf was written by a rival of P.B. Shelley in the year 1818. Find out the novel. Okay, all right. So A.S. Beat. Okay, so moving on to next question is which of the following was not written by Simon de Beauvoir? So if you okay, just I think I have missed one question, right? Let me check. Yes, I have missed one question. So 67, there are two kinds of morphemes. What are the morphemes? Bound morphemes and free morphemes. Morphemes are the lexical units, the units related to words and its meaning. So it's a unit of meaning. So there are two kinds of morpheme, bound morpheme and free morpheme. Now, moving on to question 68, that which of the following was not written by Simon de Beauvoir? So it was the work, The Female Eunuch, was written by German Greer, an Australian feminist. German Greer, okay, wrote this work in 1970. Okay, next question. Love your enemy, bless your haters, said the greatest of the great. Who said the above statement? The answer is Alfred Tennyson. Yes, guys, Alfred Tennyson wrote this very important line in the poem Locksley Hall. And the poem was written in 1886. Okay. Moving on next, Charles Dickens' David Copperfield was first published in. So this question is actually all the options are wrong. We can very clearly see that this novel was David Copperfield was published. It was serialized in 1849 and it was published on 1 November 1850. Okay. Now I'm telling you the publication history. It was published by Hablet Knight Brown. Oh, sorry. It was illustrated by rather Hablet Knight Brown. He was the illustrator of David Copperfield. Illustrations, the paintings or you can say the sketches. We know that actually Charles Dickens became Charles Dickens because of his illustrations. And it is said that almost half of the credit of Dickens' popularity goes to his illustrators. If you remember one illustrator, I can just very quickly tell you George Cruikshank. He's a very, very important illustrator who, in a way, popularized Dickens' novels, especially his caricatures, if you know, the characters with kind of humorous twitches. Okay, so, and this novel was in 624 pages. Moving on, guys, question number 71. Richard Hogarth established. So, Richard Hogarth is known as one of the founders of Birmingham Center of Contemporary Studies. We know, guys, that this Birmingham Center of Contemporary Studies was, first of all, initiated by Hogarth in the year 64. He continued to be the director of this very famous institute, also known as CCCS, Center for Contemporary and Cultural Studies. The second director in the follow-up was Stuart Hall, which was asked in Rajasthan set, and his tenure was from 1969 to 1979. Okay, and the third, who was also equally popular and also hugely contributed to this movement, was Richard Johnson. He served from 1980 to 1987. Just a quick information here that in the year 2002, you can just connect 2002, the institution, or should I say this Center of Contemporary Culture Studies was closed due to certain controversy. So we can say the total time span was from 1964 to 2002. Okay, of BCCCS or CCCS, whatever you may call it. Question 72. In the Golden Notebook, Doris Lessings So in the Golden Notebook, Doris Lessing examines, or we can say, C contains powerful anti-war message. So Doris Lessing is considered as the oldest person to receive Nobel Prize in literature, and her works are fused with uh, anti-racism, anti-apartheid, and all the political kind of messages. She comes from South Africa, and that is beauty of her novels is that they talk about the equality of humans. So it's when I'm weary of consideration and life is too much like a pathless wood, I would like to get away from earth a while, come back to it and begin over. What a beautiful line, especially in a typical style. We will say it's none other than Robert Frost. Yes, guys, these lines actually represent the typical, you can say, philosophical reflections of Robert Frost, who, in a seemingly simple language, conveys profound and deep philosophical thoughts. So the poem Birches was taken from the collection Mountain Interval, and the poem is all about man's strive for duty and his material as well as spiritual conflict. Mountain Interval came in 1916. Okay, moving on. Question number 74. In the Night of Scorpion, Ezekiel represents the superstitious attitude of. So we can say the question has a kind of twist, represents the superstitious attitude of Indian women. Okay, and we can say that I would just like to change a little bit here. Uh, it represents the superstitious attitude of the Indian peasants, I think, because the mother was not that superstitious. No? She was stung by the scorpion, and the people who were gathered, they were superstitious. So this is, I think, my take on this question. And let's write about Nissim Ezekiel. He was a Jewish, you can say, modern writer. He's also called as father of modern poetry in English, and he comes from the sub community of Jewish called as Bene Israel, and he is also called as urban poet from Mumbai or Bombay as it was called earlier. And this poem, The Night of the Scorpion, is taken from the very important poetry collection by Ezekiel called as The Exact Name, which appeared in 1965. Okay. Moving on to next, who authored the Twice Born fiction? Now, Twice Born fiction is written by Meenakshi Mukherjee, which came out in the year 1971. It is a rigorous standard critical analysis of Indian fiction, its historical, you can say, development. Communicative language teaching. Now, communicative language teaching is actually a student focused, student based approach. It was based on the study of Michael Halliday, who was a very famous linguist and also the linguist who followed the teachings of Noam Chomsky, who is known as the father of modern linguistics, and the theory appeared in 1970s. Moving on, who translated Derrida's grammatology in English? So we know that Derrida is known as the father of deconstruction, and originally this work was published in the year 1967. It was, of course, translated by the great Gayatri Spivak, and the edition appeared in 1976. Then, of course, it was further second edition 1997, and the third edition in 2016. So Gayatri Spivak is the writer who famously wrote "Can the Subaltern Speak?" Now, who coined the term gynocriticism? It was by Elaine Showalter, a feminist critic from America, in 1979 in an essay called as Feminist Criticism in Wilderness, produced gynocriticism. The famous term culture industry was coined by Theodore Adorno. Now, Theodore Adorno comes from the school called as Frankfurt School. Frankfurt School is a school of Marxist thought. It's from Germany. Other writers included Max Horkheimer and other writers. Okay. Moving on, next is, what is the pen name of Charles Lamb? Very, very easy question for all of us. He adopted a pen name called as Essays of Ilia, which first appeared in, I think, 1820. I'm not wrong. Please do check it, this one. And essays of Ilia. Ilia actually represents the Italian clerk, and these essays became very popular, known for familial style of essays. And Lamb, of course, is known as the Prince of English essays because of his intimate autobiographical prose. So next question is, who first used the term metaphysical for Donne and his followers? This question, as we saw earlier, was also asked in the same paper. So it was by Dr. Johnson, of course, in his Lives of Poets, as I have explained in my previous question or my earlier question on this topic. Blank verse is, of course, iambic pentameter, which is unrhymed. And what is iamb? Iamb is a pair of unstressed and stressed syllable. Penta means five pairs. So when there are five pairs of iamb, and the lines do not rhyme, that is what you call very popular meter called as blank verse. Question 83, who has remarked that his endeavor is to enliven morality with wit with morality? Of course, directly taken from Aristan Slet. It's one of the most trending questions also asked in net. So the answer is, of course, Joseph Edison in his work The Spectator, which appeared in the year 1711. The Spectator is considered as the greatest periodical of 18th century. It has its circulation even outside England, the whole Europe. Question 84. The Harmony of the Church is authored by Michael Drayton. Now, this is a question from Elizabethan. You can say age Michael Drayton, who also wrote Polyolbion, which is known as one of the greatest work of geographical relief or geographical features, Polyolbion. Okay, so a unit of three lines of words that rhyme together is called as triplet. Okay, three lines which rhyme together. Now, contrapuntal reading is actually a strategy that brings out the contradictions that are inherent into the text. It was developed by the father of postcolonialism, Edward Said, in his work Culture and Imperialism, which appeared in 1993. Question 87, who among the following is not a prose writer? The answer is Roy Campbell. He is a South African poet. So he is not a prose writer. Moving on to next question, Thomas Hardy's Dynast. So Thomas Hardy's Dynast is an epic play. It's a play which is based on Napoleonic Wars. And this is the only play that he wrote. It's an epic play, huge play. Question 89. The concept of deep structure and surface structure was given by Chomsky in his work Study of Syntax. Identify the figure of speech. 100 years go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead grades, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 for the rest. So the answer is hyperbole. The poet is using the element of exaggeration. Okay, and it's also called as puffery, overstatement. These are some of the names of hyperbole and overstatement also. Okay, and the lines have been taken from Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress, which is considered as a cult poem, especially in which tradition, guys? It is a poem written in the tradition of Carpe Diem. Yes, guys, a very important term. Carpe Diem is a term which actually relates very much to the Cavalier poets of the Jacobean era. Carpe Diem, or should I say, um, the age which comes after, you can say, Jacobean age, that is called as the age of 1625 to 1649. And Carpe Diem means seize the moment. Okay, capture the moment. Life is short, so enjoy it to full. So pleasure seekers, you can say. So 91 is Down Symmetry Road is the title of DJ Enright's article on the poetry of Philip Larkin. So we can say movement poetry. The question is asked from movement poetry. DJ Enright is one of the very important critics of movement poetry. Philip Larkin is kind of leader of this group. Question 92, identify the autobiographical novel written by the George Eliot. So Mill on the Floss, which has a very popular character of Maggie Tulliver, especially the last scene where Maggie Tulliver dies on the river Floss, in the river Floss, hand in hand with her brother, became a hugely sensational topic of the day, and the novel was published in 1860. and became very much the talk of the town. Question 93, Sancho Panza. Very important question, guys. This one. Sancho Panza actually is a character from Don Quixote. We called it as Quixote, written as Quixote. This work is actually called as the first modern European novel. It was published in two parts, 1605 and 1615. It is written in Spanish or called as the Spanish epic novel. The writer of the work was Miguel de Cervantes, or in short, you can write Cervantes. Very important writer, guys. Considered as the propounder of Picaresque tradition in Europe. The work actually led to the Picaresque tradition by followed by, you can say, Henry Fielding, who of course wrote Joseph Andrews. This and then eventually Tom Jones, which is considered as the high point of Picaresque tradition novel. The word picaresque means rug, R-O-G-U-E, rug, or petty criminal, or knave, K-N-A-V-E. Okay, so the work has huge implications on the development of modernism in terms of novels in Europe. Question number 94. Which of the following American play had 742 performances and has been revised on Broadway 4 times? So he is none other than Death of a Salesman, written by Arthur Miller. The work became a cult status, acquire a cult status in American drama, and it was published in 19 premiered in 1949. The work went on to receive numerous prizes. It is a tragic story of Willie Loman and how he eventually creates a suicide so that his family can get the insurance out of his death. So it's a satire on the great American dream. Curries and other Indian dishes. So it's a work which is related to the gastronomical delights of Indian dishes. The answer is, of course, Mulk Raj Anand wrote this work on cooking. Okay. Moving on to next is all about H. Hatterer. I have already told you how important this work is, and the answer to this question is, of course, G.V. Desani. I have already told you that he was in my Rajasthan Slet analysis. He was a Kenyan-born, you can say, a writer of Indian origins, and he's known for All About Ed Hatterer, which was published in 1948. The novel has a kind of rambling and very, very different kind of prose, which had a huge effect on Anthony Burgess, and Anthony Burgess eventually kind of adapted this work and published with a preface of his own in 1972. So it tells the story of a person who is of a mixed descent. His father was a European and his mother was a Malayan origin. Okay, all about H. Hatter, a highly experimental work from Indian literature. Now, moving on to question 97, which of the following texts can be classified as belonging to Middle English literature? So the answer is, of course, the Middle English literature. The text is Piers the Plowman. The rest of the text, they come from different age. Like this is from Anglo-Saxon. Fairy Queen, of course, we know Elizabethan, Volpone, Jacobean. So Piers the Plowman, we know, is a text from the age of Chaucer. Okay. Now, question number 98. Shelley defends poetry against the attack of course, the answer is T.L. Peacock. If you remember the question that I asked earlier, that who wrote a kind of a work called as, the first Roman Declef, Nightmare Abbey. So the answer is T.L. Peacock only. He is a rival of P.B. Shelley. Now, question number 99, which of the following groups of words contains only open syllables? Now, open syllables are syllables where we can see the consonant is kind of sandwiched between two group of syllables. The answer is C. So that's the correct answer. And question 100 is, bliss was attained that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven. Again, a direct question from Rajasthan Slet. We can say, or we can also, on the other hand, say that direct question in Maharashtra Slet from Rajasthan Slet, or in Rajasthan Slet from Maharashtra Slet, vice versa. So from both the question setters, we can say the same thing. So the answer is, of course, William Wordsworth. It's a quote on French Revolution. So guys, this is it. A small effort from my end from Knowledge Junction 2.0 channel. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and especially the informative section. I have tried to put everything in a nutshell and also tried to give you the kind of lead, how one question leading to many other questions. So please do call on these numbers if you want to get a taste of our classes. And also most importantly, do share this video and to all your friends, to all your literature lovers. So I will meet you with such kind of interesting and informative videos soon. Till that time, enjoy learning. Thank you.